Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Dalton and today I am going to be doing a very late quarterly book haul. So I don't really buy enough books to do a book haul once a month or anything like that, but I do buy enough that I could do once a quarter. And if you watch my last video, I've been going through some things, so I haven't really had a chance or had the energy, I should say, to film or record anything. So this is technically my quarterly book haul, even though we're further than a quarter into the year. But a lot of these books I paid full price for. I know in my last book haul I was talking about how I like to go to Goodwill and little free libraries around me and stuff like that. And there's a couple books in here like that, but for the most part, I retail therapied my way out of a breakup with books that I don't read because I'm currently in not a reading slump, but just not in a great place to read. But without further ado, let's get into the crazy amount of books that I bought. I have a problem. I need stopped. Somebody take my credit card. So I'm going to start with these books, and I can't remember if I bought them last year, at the end of December, or if I bought them in January, but I'm just going to mention them just because I don't remember. And that is the Broken Earth Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. I read the first book in this series, but I didn't own it. I think I got it from the library, and my library didn't have the second book, but they had the third book. So I just decided one day to pick all these up. Plus, I read the Inheritance Trilogy at the end of last year and frickin' loved it. I loved the first book in this series, and I've read The City We Became, and I loved that as well. N.K. Jemisin quickly became one of my favorite authors of all time. So now I have all of these. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you would know these are on my TBR this year. I want to try to read the entire trilogy, but we shall see what happens. The next book is Jade City by Fonda Lee. I don't know a whole lot about this book other than it is kind of like a Chinese-inspired mob fantasy book. Don't even quote me on Chinese. I'm not even sure I don't know a whole lot about this. I know everybody loves this series, and it was at Barnes & Noble one day, and I think it was buy one, get one 50% off, or maybe I paid full price for it, I don't remember, and I bought it. So I'm excited to read it. The next book I actually picked up, me and a couple friends went on a trip to Michigan, up to Ann Arbor, and one day we literally just went to 4 or 5 different bookstores, and I got this at a used bookstore, and I think I got it for $6 or $7, and that is Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. From what I understand of this book, basically there was this group of soldiers who were really good in their day, but whatever was happening stopped, the conflict that was happening stopped, so they no longer had to be soldiers anymore, so they went off and had kids and families and that sort of stuff, until one day they have to basically get the band back together and try to save the world or something like that. It's an epic fantasy novel. I've heard pretty mixed reviews. Just based off of what I know of it, though, I think it sounds really interesting, and I think I would really enjoy it. So hopefully I can get to this year, but if not, I'm excited to get to it whenever I am able to get to it. The next book that I picked up is Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. Again, don't know a whole lot about this. I mentioned it in my last video that I want to try to read this in the summer. It's basically a space opera with 2 queer main characters, and I think there's a murder mystery, and the author kind of just delves into the trauma of one of the main characters' background and that sort of stuff. Seems super interested. If it's queer, I want to read it, so that's all I really have to say about that one. The next book I picked up is Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James. I have literally no clue what this book is about other than the cover is incredibly stunning and weird all at the same time, and I love it. That's literally all I know. I couldn't tell you what this is about. I know the second book. I'm not sure if it's a trilogy or a series. I know the second book just came out in this not too long ago. But yeah, whenever I get to this, I am excited to read it and figure out what it's about. The next book that I picked up is the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I've heard very mixed reviews about this. I honestly just bought this because I want to give the author a try. And I think this book was like buy one get one 50% off at Barnes and Noble the one day that I was there. So I just picked this up. I really want to own a copy of My Best Friend's Exorcism, literally for no other reason than because that book cover is beautiful. I don't really know what this is about other than probably slaying vampires of some sort, so I'm excited to read this whenever I get a chance to pick it up. This is another book that I talked about in my last video, and that is The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. I mentioned in that video, I don't know a whole lot about this other than it's a big old fantasy book, and I have heard nothing but good things about it, and I love the cover. That's all I know. All I want to know. I know there's a thief, and I've heard that it's probably one of like the best written thieves that they've ever, like, people have ever read. So I'm excited to give it a try and get into it. I know the second book in this series just came out as well, so hopefully I can push it off a little bit further, so then I don't have too much time to wait for the third book, if there is a third book. Like I said, I don't really know a whole lot about it, but excited to read it. The next book I also bought at Barnes & Noble when they were doing like a buy one get one 50% off sale. Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. I know it has to do with like the Knights and the Round Table and that sort of stuff. It's a YA fantasy. I know the main character's mom passes away, so like it deals with a lot of that trauma and grief that's going on with our main character. It's YA, but I've heard such good things about it that I'm willing to give it a chance, even though I don't really love a whole lot of YA stuff anymore. But I just picked it up because the internet raved about it, and I do want to give it a chance. Again, don't know when I'll get to it, but excited for whenever I'm able. The next book that I got is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Crosby. I was supposed to get this for Christmas, but I'm going to count it because I didn't end up getting it until like January, just because of when Christmases fell. I have actually read this book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. My only one downside is that it is very strange to read like a redemption arc to like a homophobic person. Like I wish the story would have focused on the queer sons instead of their homophobic fathers trying to understand. It's just weird. Like we don't need to redeem homophobes. Like I'm glad that they're not homophobic now, but like at the same time, like it's just a weird subject. I don't know. It was good. The writing was beautiful. I really would like to read a couple more books by S.A. Crosby. I know he has one or two others. But yeah, I'm excited to read something else by him, and I did like this, so. Another book that I bought this year and have actually read is To Paradise by Hanya Yanagihara. I freaking love this book. This is a massive, like 700-page literary fiction. I would love to say masterpiece, but I don't think it is a masterpiece because there are some weird things going on in here. But basically, this follows like 3 different centuries. The first perspective is set in the 1890s, the second perspective is set in the 1990s, and then the third perspective is set in like 2090. I really loved some things about this book and really didn't like other things. The first book I thought was fabulous. I loved every minute of it. It basically takes place in like a reimagined version of New York where queer marriage is legal and that sort of stuff. People are kind of liberal. There's some issues there that I found, but I'm not going to delve into them. Second book is taking place during the 90s, like I said, and it's basically this younger attorney who ends up falling in love with an older attorney, and then like issues with his father. It was strange. I didn't love the second part of that story because it focuses on the father, and I cared more about the son personally. And then the last and the longest section, you're basically following, I don't want to call her mentally handicapped, but there's definitely something wrong with her. And we follow, it's like rotating perspectives between her and her grandpa as the world starts changing and things start getting progressively worse. It's a super strict society in America where like everything is rationed and that sort of stuff. It's very strange. Very strange book, but I did really love it. Like I mentioned in my last video, I will read anything Hanya Yanagihara writes because her writing is unbelievably incredible. but I did love this book. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Keeping on the Hanya Yanagihara train, I did pick up The People in the Trees at some point this year. I want to say in January maybe. It might have been the end of December, but I'm going to keep it in here anyways. This is the only novel by her I haven't read yet, and I am thoroughly looking forward to reading it. It was in my last video. I want to try to get to it this year, or this summer, but we will see. I think I picked this up at Goodwill, and I have no clue what it's about other than it was super popular on BookTube a long time ago, like when it first came out, and that is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I know this author has recently come out with a couple more books. I think this has to do with like a traveling circus, but it's set in like an apocalyptic society. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. But that's really all I know about this. I think it's literary fiction. It's not too long, so I might try to get to it at some point this year, but it's definitely not at like the top of my list of things that I want to read, to be honest. But I own a copy, so if I ever have an inkling or a desire to read it, I can. I picked this book up in Michigan as well, and that is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I have wanted to read The Goldfinch for so freaking long, and I still have yet to do it. It's probably been on every TBR other than my summer one that I just posted on this channel because I've wanted to read it for that long, to be honest. And for whatever reason, every time I pick it up, I end up putting it down because I have to start something else or something like that, because I'll like start a book with my friend or something. Something always comes up where I just don't read it. But I did read like 30 pages of it and I was loving it. So I decided to pick this up. I might try to read this one beforehand because it is a lot shorter. By a lot, I mean a couple 100 pages. They're both pretty long and pretty chunky books, but no clue what this is about. Don't want to know what it's about. I just want to go into it and read some really good literary fiction. And that's about it. That's all I really care about. And I'm sure this is probably gonna be that. So I also got this on the Michigan trip, and it is just like this giant like bind up of literature. I know it has plays, poems, short stories. I think like maybe a couple novels. I want to say The Great Gatsby was in here when I was looking, and maybe the life and narrative of Frederick Douglass. But it's just like, I got it for $1. I think it was on clearance at one of the used bookstores that I went to. And I have so many like literature editions from when I was in college. So I kind of just like, at this point, just like collecting them. Have a whole bunch of like the Norton Anthology ones. So when I seen this for $1, I could not buy it. So another book that I got in Michigan is Stamped from the Beginning. I talked about this in my last video as well. I really want to look into this. It's the definitive history of racism or racist ideas in America. I've heard nothing but great things. Like I mentioned, I read the prologue of this while on that trip and found it to be incredible. But I am so excited to get to this. I am excited to read more nonfiction because I just don't read it that often anymore. So yeah. Another book that I got in Michigan is this 3-volume like bind up of Edith Wharton's novels. I know that The Age of Innocence is in here, which was the only one that I knew of like off the top of my head. I read a couple short stories in college by Edith Wharton and loved them so much. So when I seen this, I think it was like $10 or something at a used bookstore. Plus this cover is beautiful. I just had to pick it up. Like, look at this one. They're talking, and it's just beautiful. I loved it. I don't know when I'll ever read these. Like I said, I do want to read The Age of Innocence. I think I started it in college, but I just didn't have time to actually finish it. But we shall see. Loved Edith Wharton. When I seen this, I could not buy it. So yeah. I bought this novel in Michigan as well, and I guess I shouldn't call it a novel because it is just kind of like a novella. That is Chard by Brandon Sanderson. I have no clue what this is about. I know that there's a couple little novellas that you're supposed to read in the Stormlight Archive, and they released them in these little tiny editions, which, let me just be honest, I absolutely hate because they don't fit any other Brandon Sanderson novel that I have, and they just sit on my shelf weird. And I think there's like 2 or 3 of them like this. I wish they would have just got put in like the other edition of novellas and stuff that he had, the Arcanum Unbound or whatever that one's called. Anyways, that's beyond the point. No clue what this is about. Just picked it up because I was at a bookstore and wanted to support them because it was a cute little bookstore. So then I think this is the last book that I picked up in Michigan, and I talked about this in my last video as well. and that is House of Sky and Breath. It's one of the Crescent City novels by Sarah J. Maas. I just find the cover beautiful, and I knew I already owned the first one. I've not heard great things about this novel, but it's Sarah J. Maas. I'm sure it's going to be a good time, even if I don't love it. I'm sure I'm not going to hate it. It's probably super character focused and like romance heavy, but that's fine. We'll see what happens. I have talked about this book to death and back on this channel, and that is Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honoré Fanon Jeffers. Not going to mention a whole lot about this. I got it for Christmas, so there's that. And I got it for Christmas, but I didn't technically get it until January, like mid-January, so I'm counting it. Talked about this in my last video as well, and that is These Violent Delights by Micah Nemirever. Super excited to get to this. I read like the first 50 pages of this and loved it. Just wasn't in a good place to continue on it when I got home from the Michigan trip. So I am hoping to get to this soon, but I am so excited. Then I got this at Goodwill one day, and that is Paradise Lost by John Milton. This is like the super epic poem of his, and it's like the Norton Critical edition, which has like a whole bunch of essays and stuff going over like different parts of the poem and that sort of stuff. I don't know if I'll ever actually read this, but I figured it was cool to have because I do have a lot of my books from college, and I think I have a couple other Norton Critical editions of different things, so I was just excited to have it, and it was $1.99, so I picked it up. Then this novel, me and my friend were supposed to read in January or February, I want to say, maybe March. I think it might have been March, but I don't know what happened. We just never talked about it, and we never started it. But that is Kafka on the Shore by Murakami. I know nothing about this book other than Murakami is super famous, has a lot of strange stuff going on in his novels. I've heard that the writing is absolutely stunning, so I'm excited for that. There's a cat on the cover, so I'm going to guess there's a cat at some point in this novel. But beyond that, that's really all I know. So, yeah. The next book I think I picked up at one of my local little free libraries around the corner, and that is Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. I have no clue what this is about at all. I will probably end up taking it back to that little library because I don't know if I'll ever read this. I know I have either one or two of his other books in the other series that he has, but I didn't realize quite how long this book is. It's almost like 1,000 pages. The type is tiny. I just don't know. I don't know if I'll ever get to this, so I probably shouldn't have picked it up. But it's in my house now, so yeah. The only reason I picked this up, and I think I got it at Goodwill, is because one of my coworkers raves about this series. I know I probably am not going to love this book, but I would like to give it a chance and at least read the first book in the series, and that is Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. It's super romance heavy. I think it's like time travel back into like Scotland, medieval Scotland or something like that. I have no idea. I only picked it up for her. Plus it was $2.99 for the big floppy paperback edition, so I just got it. I couldn't tell you when I'll ever get to this. I might try to listen to the audiobook and read along to that at some point this year, but we shall see. The next thing that I picked up is Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington. This is another one of the Norton Critical editions. I got it at Goodwill again for $1.99. I've actually read a majority, if not all, of this speech by Washington. So I'm just excited to have like the different reviews and everything that come along with this copy. I don't know when I'll ever actually read any of it. If I ever go back to grad school or something and I don't know what I would need it for, but I have it. I have a copy. I have another Norton Critical edition, so that's pretty much it. The next book that I got, I have actually already read, and that is Breath, Eyes, and Memory by Edwidge Danticat. I had to read this for, I want to say an Africana lit class that I took in college. I loved the writing of this. It's so beautiful, but like simple at the same time. I think I described it in college as like, when you're reading this, it feels like you're like a butterfly just floating. That's kind of how reading this feels. I really like the story, and I didn't own a copy at the time. I think I got it from the library. Now I own a copy. I don't know if I'll ever reread it, but I did really like it, so never say never. The next book I also got at Goodwill and I've also read, and that is The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. I think I had to read this for a global Anglophone class that I took in college. It's in India during the partition, I want to say, or something like that. I know it's after colonialism and after the British have pulled out of the country of India. I think I listened to the audiobook of this, so I don't really remember a whole lot of it because I didn't have a physical copy. It was one of the first audiobooks that I had ever actually like just listened to. So I would love to reread this at some point. I think I gave it 3 or 4 stars the first time I read it, but I have no clue when I'll ever get back to it. But if I ever want to, I have a copy now. So that was a long one, and now I'm tired of talking. I have a pile of books surrounding me now. But thank you guys so much for watching. Those are all the books that I have gotten this year at some point or another, or at least in the first quarter of the year. Thank you guys so much for watching again. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace out. Bye.